One late March afternoon, Bemidji State University student and single mother Kim Hettinger decided to call a cab. She'd been shopping at the Paul Bunyan Mall on the west edge of town and needed to get home. She waited an hour, no cab. Finally, a friend happened by and offered a lift. Just then, the cab arrived, and Kim told the driver she didn't need him anymore.
The cab followed us to 15th and Irvine, and there, 2 cop cars stopped us and pulled us over. And the cab driver pointed me out. Immediately, the officer came over and opened up my door, ordered me out of the car.
Kim says the officer told her she'd committed theft and fraud and ordered her to pay the driver a $3 service fee. She paid. She says he then misled her to believe she was being arrested.
And I said, well, what am I going to do with my son? And he says, I don't care if your son was dying. I said, you're a public servant here to serve and to protect, and you don't care if my son was dying. He had no response. Then I said, you're doing this because I'm Indian and so is my son.
It's familiar talk in Bemidji that the police pick on Indians first, that they tail cars bearing Red Lake Reservation plates, that Indians keep the local criminal justice system in the black with all their traffic fines. Last year, in an effort to learn how legitimate all of this is, the city formed its first Law Enforcement Liaison Committee. It's a panel of city and county representatives and Indians who hear complaints like Kim Hettinger's and decide whether to recommend investigations. So far, there have been very few formal complaints. Far more common are the informal ones, the ones that come in by the dozens, the letters to the editor variety alleging police unfairness or brutality.
All we can do is deny it because I know it's not true and the people on the department know it's not true.
Bob Tell has been Bemidji's police chief for almost a decade. He sat on the liaison committee until recently, but stepped down because he said it put him in an automatically defensive position. In this town, where the per capita crime rate is among the highest in the state, Tell admits that a disproportionate number of those arrested are Indians, about 40%, but he says that's socioeconomics at work, not police discrimination.
I have faith in the people that are working for me. Number one, I have just, a super bunch of guys, and they're out there taking this guff. Even more than I am.
710-8.
10-4.
Weeknights are slow for Bemidji patrolman Darrell Russell. He's a 10-year man on the force and knows the routine well. Check out the bars, answer a domestic disturbance or two, stop a few speeders.
Yes, sir. I clocked you up to 42 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. Have you had any tickets for anything in the last 6 months?
Russell gets irritated at the frequent allegations that the police are especially hard on non-whites. He says the converse is actually true, that officers here use extra care to avoid even the appearance of discrimination. That's especially important, he says, because in a town as racially explosive as Bemidji, it's nearly impossible not to have some racist feelings.
I am prejudiced against Indians. I think a lot of, or most of, or all of the members of our department are. I think most or all of the white members of the community are. And like I say, it's because they're a minority population of a high concentration in this area. I don't know how you cannot be prejudiced, but you cannot discriminate, but I don't know how you cannot be prejudiced.
857.
But many Indians feel criminal justice here is stacked against them, that there are too many layers of white to break through. Since the Law Enforcement Liaison Committee was established last year, just 6 formal complaints have been brought forward. None of those have resulted in reprimands to officers. A problem, says committee chairman Joe Bellinger, is the simple fear of reprisal.
The people, when they do have a complaint or something does happen to them, they keep the thing within themselves, and they carry it around, and it builds on them, and they have a grudge on them. Our situation here in this town here is where, there is a complaint or anything like that, they feel that the retaliation isn't worth the, publicity.
Bemidji Mayor Doug Peterson.
If I ever find that these things are substantiated and they are proven to be true, that I will get involved desperately as it relates to correcting that problem. If we find an officer who is showing a problem with racism, we will correct that problem.
Some say, though, that the chain of investigation doesn't lend itself to punishing law officers who show racist behavior. The police department is responsible for investigating itself. If the complainant is unsatisfied, he or she can go next to the city manager, the local human rights commission, or the courts, and that means a lot of effort for what might seem a trivial complaint. Most cases never get beyond the police investigation, and Kim Hedinger says the police want it that way.
I think that they're doing it maybe just to soothe our wounds, and no, I don't think they're really taking it seriously. I think they have no intent of even reprimanding the officers who take this attitude towards Indian people.
But racial issues are being taken seriously by many local leaders. In employment, housing, even with the Law Enforcement Liaison Board, Bemidji is trying to shake off the label of racism that's been stuck tightly for decades. Still, as one local Indian leader said, the wheel is turning too slowly. It's time we had a welcome, and not just tolerance. This is Leif Enger. Kit Morgan is visibly nervous as he enters the manager's office. He's been through these interviews before. The manager, acting none too friendly, stands up behind his desk. They shake hands and sit. The questions begin.
How did you learn about the job?
I attended school at the Bemidji Vocational for 2 years, got a carpentry degree.
Are you willing to travel
Yeah,
if the job requires?
yes.
It's almost like a real job interview, only the job isn't real, the manager is actually a teacher, and afterwards Morgan will get some pointers that will make his next practice interview go a bit smoother. Irv Sargent is a member of the White Earth Chippewa Band and head of the Bemidji Indian Employment Council, which has sponsored classes like this one for the past 5 years.
There were a lot of Indian people that wanted jobs but weren't really prepared to go out. The people that we deal with here in our classroom are those that aren't quite as polished and need some skills in terms of interviewing, motivation, assertiveness, those sorts of things.
The Employment Council was formed in the summer of '85 after Leech Lake Reservation leader Hartley White asked city and county leaders why more Indians weren't working in Bemidji. Indians make up 10% of the population here, but 50% of those are unemployed. Quentin White, a class member from Red Lake, says his best success at finding work in the past came when he got white friends to go to employers and vouch for him.
They would rather listen to them and rather than have me come in there and talk to them because I'm Indian, I guess, because they would rather have a white person come and talk for an Indian rather than have the Indian come in there, and they wouldn't really listen to the Indian if I came in there myself, is the way I feel.
The council has so far placed about 50 Indians in full-time permanent jobs and another 150 in part-time or seasonal work. Stories like Quentin White's are common, but Irv Sargent says the reason so many Indians still aren't working goes beyond discrimination.
There's not that much of an opportunity for anybody, white or Indian people. You see the competition for jobs is just tremendous. We had a case here a couple of years ago when the city hired 2 people, and I think they had something like 350 applicants for those 2 jobs. In some cases, somebody's almost going to have to say, I am going to hire an American Indian, for Indians to be hired.
At the Minnesota Department of Transportation District Headquarters, a front-end loader scoops gravel into the back of a big orange dump truck. The driver of the truck is Indian, so are 10 other local MnDOT workers, and the agency is actively recruiting more. District Engineer Bob Wolf says growing up on the edge of the Leech Lake Reservation gave him a first-hand look at job discrimination.
For some reason, something happened after I got out of high school. There were opportunities that were open to me that weren't to some of my friends, and they didn't really seem to end up getting a full-time job, or in some cases not even working, going on welfare. It was like kind of a quiet prejudice that wasn't mean towards anyone, but it's just like you didn't exist, that there weren't Indian people around.
That quiet prejudice is what Wolf and others are trying to work against in Bemidji. It's a difficult battle. Mark Farabee, who places low-income clients in temporary jobs through the Rural Minnesota Concentrated Employment Program, or CEP, says Indians born into families of 3rd or 4th generation poverty often have such low expectations that they don't even recognize racism when they see it.
I think some of these folks do come from an area where it's accepted that they're going to be not as employable. They may not even know or understand that they're being discriminated against. I believe that that's a part of the problem.
But if progress has been slow, local leaders say, at least there's been progress. Getting more Indians into the workplace has turned out to be an incremental process with lots of part-time and low pay so far. Across town from the Indian Employment Council, Irv Sargent's brother Earl, who works at the State Indian Affairs Office, says you take what you can get and keep working for more.
It's awful nice now to walk into a store and in some of the stores, not all of them, and see an Indian, even though it's bagging up groceries or stocking shelves or working at a checkout counter or something of that nature. I'll tell you, it's pretty darn nice, but we still don't see it in the banks and loan institutions here. We don't see it in a lot of places. It's slow. It's coming. We got our foot in the door, but there's a long ways to get it where there's equal opportunity.
Indian Affairs employee Earl Sargent. This is Leif Enger.
Daddy.
5 o'clock is a busy hour at the shelter run by the Northwoods Coalition for Battered Women. Supper, salad and fry bread, is almost ready. The kids are hungry and rambunctious and crowded. The big house is supposed to provide temporary shelter for 9 people. Right now, there are 22.
Thank you. Mom, what were you guys doing downstairs?
It's a double whammy when you're Indian and you're a woman.
Bev Warren is co-director at the shelter. She says finding permanent homes for these abused mothers and children can be simple or difficult, according to their race.
For the most part, I have seen white women come in with children and can be out of here in a week. They found a house, they've gotten help, they're gone. And I don't find it quite so easy for Indian women.
Mary is 35 years old. She's a battered wife and a mother of 6. She's been here almost 2 months now and says she has rent money, but she's running out of patience.
I've been checking the papers every day. When I see something in a paper that's big enough for my family, I call them, and as soon as they find out I'm an Indian, then it just they don't want to rent to me. Sometimes I feel like I want to change my last name because it seems like that's really against me too.
Housing for people like Mary has been a troublesome issue in Bemidji. In 1988, the city was offered a federal low-income housing grant of $1.4 million. The city council refused the money, saying it needed to do a comprehensive housing study first. The refusal sparked an uproar among local activists who said Bemidji was ignoring its poor. Now the city has reapplied for the money and plans to begin building 20 new low-income homes this summer. Mayor Doug Peterson.
Our number one priority as it relates to the city council is to upgrade our housing, to upgrade our neighborhoods. So I think the council is doing an outstanding job to address the real needs of the low-income people and to provide housing and safe surroundings and whatever they need.
Besides the new homes, Peterson cites an ongoing city program that upgrades existing homes for people who can't afford to do it themselves. But cries of discrimination persist, particularly among Indians looking for homes to rent. Gene Moen is the owner of Property Professionals, which manages more than 50 rental units in town.
The discrimination that is often talked about is I believe, most often a lack of understanding what the rules are. I think that folks have a preconceived notion that you just walk in and find a place to rent and then you go rent it. And they don't realize that there are things that have to be taken care of first.
Things like personal references, past rental history, and first and last month's rent. Moen says people on welfare, Indian and white, frequently come in expecting that his staff will track down their references for them. And when that doesn't happen, they leave disillusioned.
We're a private business. We're not an educating business, so that we aren't, we just can't pay employees to call for directory assistance and look up phone numbers for people to find. I mean, they need to do those things on their own, and they get frustrated when they don't have those things done, or when they expect us to do it and we can't afford to spend that much time with everybody that walks in the door.
Moen suggests that if more people kept track of their rental histories, fewer people would have trouble finding housing. Others say that even requiring extensive reference lists institutionalizes discrimination, that it keeps poor people in poor surroundings. Mark Farabee, a former chair of the local Human Rights Commission who now works for the rural Minnesota Concentrated Employment Program, says some compromise needs to be reached. He says in a town where unemployment is twice the state average, helping people find a place to live would be sure to help in other ways as well.
When you're looking just day to day for your food, shelter, clothing, housing, and you see people around you in middle-class environment who have a surplus of that, it does start to impact on people's self-esteem, their feelings of self-worth, their feelings of their ability to compete in a job market or in school.
In the noisy shove and squeeze of the battered women's shelter, Mary says she's getting tired of looking for a place to take her family. A job, some schooling, those are things to worry about down the line. Right now she just wants to go live somewhere, but she says the people who can't find homes are always the ones who need them the most.
It makes me feel like I want to hate people, but I wasn't raised that way, and I'm not going to start beginning to feel prejudice against people either. I don't know. It makes me really feel like I want to give up. I feel like I want to put my kids in foster homes, and I feel like I just want to leave.
See you guys later. Bye. See you guys. See you guys later.
This is Leif Enger.
This object is APBIGAN. Table. That's it. It is a desk though, but that's close enough. Okay, and the Appaloosa is right at the wire. Horse number 3. This is one of our greeting words. What am I saying when I say bonjour? Hello. All right.
Ojibwe schoolteacher Bambi Goodwin has everyone's attention this morning. The first grade class is divided into teams. Each team has a different horse up on the blackboard. The better the kids know their Ojibwe words, the faster their horses head for the finish line.
Okay, who can tell me what Byzantine is?
I'll see. Listen.
Listen, yes. That's why it's so important. I'm going to give you guys that one.
For the first graders here at Bemidji's J.W. Smith Elementary School, this hour a week of Ojibwe language and culture is a wonderful game. They compete, they earn paper feathers as merit badges, and they get to go home and confuse their parents by saying bonjour instead of hello. The lessons get more complicated as the students get older, right up through high school. But teacher Bambi Goodwin says the most important lessons are learned right here, among the very young.
I have a question that says, what is an Indian? And 5 years ago, we got some real crazy answers like someone who dances around a fire and wears feathers, and people who wear war paint, and now 5 years later, I've noticed a big difference on the pretest. I did not get one real derogatory image of Native Americans, and most of them were very accurate.
The Bemidji School District decided to implement the Ojibwe curriculum not long after the State Board of Education issued a policy statement encouraging schools to include Native American subjects. School officials say it's helped decrease the tension that sometimes arises between the district's 10% Indian minority and non-Indian students, but there was and is resistance to the program. Cheryl Berglund was one of a small number of parents who took their children out of Ojibwe class.
I thought, my child is going to learn more about another culture and a language, more than she would know about her own. It rubbed me the wrong way.
5 school years later, Berglund continues to keep her daughter out of Ojibwe classes. The program still bothers her. She feels it was ramrodded through, that the school board never gave parents the chance to comment on the curriculum before it got rolling, and she says it steps too near the line of church and state separation.
In the Ojibwe culture, like many cultures, they intertwine their daily living with spiritualism. That is what I brought up to the school board, that I thought this was rather on thin ice, doing powwows during school time and expecting the school children and teachers to participate.
All we're trying to do is just bridge a cultural gap that we need to bridge in our community.
Ken Litzow is a White Earth Chippewa and principal of Central Elementary School.
It's not like a program where one was going to learn French or German or like that. It's more of a program to provide just some basic information, some fundamental understanding of a culture. You know, we've been neighbors in this area here, for hundreds of years now, and we're still isolated from each other,
Litzow says the Ojibwe curriculum may have stirred up the community when it came in 5 years ago, but contends that things needed stirring up. Barry Yoakum, who directs the Upward Bound College Prep program at Bemidji State University, says teaching Ojibwe from the first grade up shows Indian students that their culture is indeed valuable and can set the pattern for the rest of their school years.
There's some subtle things, I think, that happen in schools. And those things have to do with expectations that we might set for Native American students in schools that may not be as high in some cases as expectations we might have of Anglo students in schools. That student graduates, comes out into the world, wants to pursue higher education. The result is they're not comparably equipped to deal with the academic challenges as their Anglo counterparts, and that's unfair.
Central School Principal Ken Litzow.
I'm very loyal to Bemidji, and I think it's a healthy place to raise a family and work and so on. But it also has problems, and one of those problems is racism. And isn't that what education is all about? Trying to look at what our needs are in our community and provide them in our school.
In Bambi Goodwin's classroom, another horse race is over. The kids have collected their feathers, and now a few of them, Indian and white, gather to hash over the class and say what they think of it all.
Ojibwe class is my favorite class in school. Because I want to learn about Indians when I grow up, because all different kind of Indians. My grandpa and grandma, they learned about Indians when they were kids, and then they tell me all about Indians.
Always listen to your elders because they've got more experience.
Bemidji first graders from the Ojibwe class at J.W. Smith Elementary School. This is Leif Enger.
I think I'll try to teach other people Ojibwe.
The morning of October 25th, 1966, Bemidji writer and teacher Bob Troyer got into his car and headed for the Red Lake Indian Reservation, where he then worked. Troyer is white. He is married to a Chippewa, the chief judge for the Red Lake Tribal Court. He remembers that morning as cool and dreary, a normal fall morning, until he leaned forward and snapped on his car radio.
And here come the pundit tones of Bob Cole, a regular editorial commentator on what was then the only radio station in Bemidji, Minnesota. The bottom line was that to spend money for welfare for Indians was a waste, and it shouldn't be done, and let the lowest of the low die.
It was a broadcast few Indians here have forgotten. Commentator Bob Cole characterized Indians on welfare as, quote, so low on the human scale it is doubtful they will ever climb upward, and suggested that welfare laws be rewritten to help only those who are salvageable, letting disease and hunger wipe out the rest. By the time Troyer arrived at work, most of the Red Lake Tribal Council had heard the broadcast. He remembers that morning's council meeting.
In the silence that followed their hearing of the Bob Cole broadcast, you could taste the bitter gall So this is what they think about us. That was the reaction.
What finally came out of that tribal headquarters was a decision to launch an immediate boycott of Bemidji businesses. The council reasoned it was the merchants who supported Bob Cole on the radio. Let the merchants pay the price. Led by tribal chairman Roger Jourdain, the Red Lake Chippewa Band asked its members to spend no money in Bemidji. The White Earth and Leech Lake bands quickly joined the boycott.
The general attitude in Bemidji, up and down Main Street, was, ho, 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 these Indians are going to boycott Bemidji, big deal. But then, the shopping weekend was over, and for the first time since Bemidji had been built on hitherto Indian lands, there wasn't a single Indian to be seen shopping in Bemidji.
It didn't take too long before that almighty dollar it started making its effects felt here in the city.
Earl Sargent was one of relatively few Indians living in Bemidji proper in 1966.
My wife and I just agreed that we wouldn't shop in town here. We went out of town to shop. We joined right in with the boycott, even though we lived here. And I know several other people in town did the same thing. They do their shopping in Cass Lake or Black Duck and so forth.
But Sargent says the radio editorial, though inflammatory, couldn't have triggered the boycott all by itself. Instead, it was the last straw, the articulation of an attitude that had developed in Bemidji over decades. Bob Troyer.
If an Indian is off the reservation, if he lives in town, has a town job, is middle class, upwardly mobile, then he is a good Indian. Remember, it was in the downtown streets of Bemidji and Cass Lake that at the time of the last Indian uprising, 1898, there were sandbagged gun emplacements dug on the courthouse lawn and so on. That old Wild West thing isn't all that old around here.
Just days into the boycott, Troyer says, the city's composure began to crack. The loss of Indian customers was noticed on Main Street. Local resorters worried the bad publicity would have an effect on the tourist trade. A group of Bemidji clergy met with Red Lake leaders and asked them unsuccessfully to end the boycott. When Indian officials took the next step and threatened to withdraw tribal funds from local banks, it became clear the boycott had to end. First National Bank Board Chairman Joe Welly remembers being a young loan officer at the time.
All of a sudden, a person that's been very good customer of yours, or has been very personal relationship with them, are they going to come into the bank, or are you going to meet them on the street, and is the relationship still going to exist? The leadership was very concerned.
The boycott came to an end on November 4th after a long, noisy meeting in Red Lake that included the leadership of Bemidji, Beltrami County, the reservation, and KBUN Radio, which broadcast the editorial. Bob Cole resigned his position as commentator and also stepped down from his publicist's job at the Chamber of Commerce. And a new group was created, the Community Relations Commission, whose job it was to build opportunities for Indians and smooth over the bad feelings. Now the epilogue. Bob Cole, who delivered the commentary, has retired to Utah, where his hobbies include archaeology and the relics of ancient peoples. Contacted by telephone, he maintained that all he did in 1966 was to tell the truth. He says he was misunderstood.
What I was trying to point out was that maybe in the long run, for their sake, and this was a bad choice of words, of course, that we should have let natural forces take over, and this included such things as starvation and hunger and so on. But we have to remember that a lot of these people up there at Red Lake, in effect, were out of the bush, so to speak, for only a couple of hundred years. And so our idea of civilization was a little bit more advanced.
Cole left Bemidji in 1980 and was given a 200-guest farewell banquet by the Chamber of Commerce. Red Lake Tribal Chairman Roger Jourdain, who led the boycott and remains at the heart of Indian-White relations in northern Minnesota, refused to be interviewed for this story. So did several other Indian leaders who were instrumental in the boycott. The summation, then, is left to a white man, writer Bob Troyer, who keeps a thick file on the boycott but never needs to look at it to tell the story.
I think it symbolized a quantum shift in power. Indians may have lost their land base, but this was a statement, and they made it stick, that we may be small in numbers, we may have only very little land left, but we still are, and we will be recognized as such.
Bemidji writer Bob Troyer. This is Leif Enger.